Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday presented by Delta Media Group, where we recently came across the knowledge that Canada doesn't exist. It turns out it's all just Maple Leaf. they'll, they'll get better, I promise. That was pretty bad. In the new year, I'll put more effort into the one-off dad jokes. All right, so today we are going to take a look at seller reports. So first off, a seller report is something that you can set up to send to a seller of a listing that will go out automatically, usually weekly, but you can change that that interval to a few different options. And when it goes out, it'll be basically an email that includes traffic stats about the listing. It can include some comps related to the listing, open houses for comparable listings, both upcoming and past, and it can also include various information about even showing statistics. So if you've created or entered showings into the system as they've happened on that property, that information can be included in those reports as well. So first off, to configure the seller reports, we'll go to your message settings page. Now there are a few different ways to get here. I could just type email message settings up here, email message, and there we go. So you can see a link pops up right there that'll take me where I need to go. Or I could click over here on my settings toggle, or gear rather, let's call it a gear. And I could search for email message settings here as well. So however I choose to get there, this is the page I will land on. And now if we scroll down, we'll find a section labeled Seller Report Options. So if we expand that, you can see these are all the different things that I can toggle on and off for inclusion in my seller reports. So you see I can choose whether or not the competing listings section is in place, whether or not pending listings show up, whether or not sold listings are included, and it gives you some information about how it determines what's comparable when it comes to a sold listing. The open houses section, web crawler views, which you may or may not want to include. So it is at its heart, it's really like a traffic stat report. So what kind of traffic has landed on the listing detail page for whatever the subject listing is. And web crawler views are good, because that means that search engines out there are basically reviewing the detail page and indexing it for being on their search results page, but they can be misinterpreted by the seller if they don't know what that means. So that's why we give you the option of turning those off if you'd like. You can include lifetime stats of the listing, which is particularly useful if you're talking about like a luxury listing that you expect to be on the market for a long time. By default, I want to say it shows roughly 6 months worth of stats, but it doesn't go back indefinitely. If you switch this on, then it will show those stats going back as long as the listing has been on the market. So particularly useful for listings that have been on the market for a long time. And then you can also include co-listing agents if you want those to be displayed on those reports. Next, you have options to choose the template. So template 3 we have set as the default in here, but you can choose from the other seller report templates if you want to use a different one. And then lastly, you do have a section where it describes here exactly what it does. This section, or adds a section near the top of the seller reports globally for all seller reports. Leaving both fields blank will not set anything that will show up there. So it allows you to fill this section out, and it's kind of like an add section that can show up near the top of the seller reports. Keep in mind with this section, and really with everything else in here, that all of these settings affect every seller report that's sent out on your behalf. So you're not setting these for any specific seller report. Everything you put here will show on all of the seller reports, regardless of who they're going to or what listing they're being sent for. So once you have these options set the way you'd like them, just click on Update Traffic Report Template, and that will save the seller report options that you've chosen here. Now, to actually set up a seller report, we'll need to go to our Manage Listings page. So just like getting to this page, I could type it up here into the quick actions, and I'd have an option to go there if I just type in Manage My Listings. Here we are. It's actually the first option here, Manage My Listings. And if you don't remember that, listing is probably a good bet there. So if I just type in listings, you can see it pops up as a result as well. Or I can click on the side navigation and click on Manage My Listings if that option is there for you. This navigation is customized from one company to the next, so you may or may not see that there. Alternatively, you can just click on Listings, and that will take you to a Listings landing page, and there's a good chance that you have a Manage Listings link in the tiles on this page as well. But again, however you choose to get there, this is the page you'll land on. Now once you're here, to go over each listing and see if there's a seller report on it, I can just click on Tools, and you can see I have an option, or a section rather, for seller reports, and those are all the seller reports that are set up for this listing. If I click on this one, you can see we have that same section, but this one doesn't have any setup. So the conventional method of setting up a seller report would be just to click on your Tools button, go to your Seller Reports section, and then whatever is in it is a link that will take you through to the Seller Reports page. So you can see all the seller reports you have set up already, and I have 3 set up for this listing, so here they are. This one goes out to the seller with a copy to the agent. This one goes just to the agent. This one goes just to the seller. To add a new one, I'll just click up here in the top left, report to a seller, or I can go with set up a report to just you, the agent. It depends on what I would like it to do. But we'll click there. That opens up our seller report creation interface. And then from here, I can put in a name. So we'll say Tech Tuesday Test Seller. We can type there. We're getting there. Seller. There we are. TTTS. Tech Tuesday Test Seller. Get it? Next step. And then what the system immediately does is it searches your customer database to see if it can find anyone that matches what you've typed in, or that it thinks might be a match for what you type in. That way, if you already have the customer entered, you can just select them here and click on Next Step. That'll take you through, and then from there you can set up a seller report, and it will attach it to this particular account, or customer account, really. Now, what you can also do is, if it did not find a match, or if the match it found isn't right, you don't have to check anything. You can just click No Seller Matched, and then it will pop up a little interface down here that allows you to create a new customer account for this that you'll attach the seller report to. So in this case, this is the right one, so I'll just check that box and click Next. And now this takes me on to where I can actually configure the seller report itself. So I have one more option to choose who I would like it to go to. So send to seller with a copy to the agent is what it defaults to. And from here, I can have this box checked, and I can put some additional recipients here to be copied on this report as well. We generally suggest, if you want the seller report to go to multiple people, that you actually set up a separate seller report for each person. Gives you more freedom as far as customizing it on a per person basis, and even turning it on and off per person. But if you want exactly the same seller report to go to multiple people or multiple email addresses, then you can add additional recipients here. Now your other options here would be to set it up to go to just the seller, which again you can also add recipients to that one, or set it as agent only, in which case this report will just go to you. So we'll leave that on seller with a copy to the agent. I could add in more, but we won't add any more for this particular report. Next, we can add some notes here that'll appear on this seller report. My test note, why not? If I wanted to add more, I can add another note, and I can drop another one in right below it. Next, I have the option of choosing a data template. Now what that means is basically all the information used here and all the information down here that I would override to figure out what, or really to more fine-tune what the system considers to be comps for the sake of this report. If I commonly change this in a specific way, and I don't want to re-enter it for every single seller report I set up, then I can use this drop-down here, and I can select from a template that has all those things defined. And you can see all those other fields go away when I select a template, because the template is doing the defining for what those need to be. Now that's just a template that I have set. If I'd like to make a new one or just review what I have, I can click on Manage Templates. That'll actually open a new browser tab so I don't lose where I am. And then from here, I can only have one template set up right now, but if I'd like to add another one, I can add a new data template. I can choose its send day. I can choose its title. I can choose its frequency if I want it to go out at something different than weekly. They all default to weekly by default, but I can go bi-weekly or monthly if I'd like. So we'll leave that on weekly. I can set my initial send date. And then I can also go through here and I can customize what I consider to be a closer setup for comps for everything that I'm going to use this template for. In this case, I'll just check a couple of options just to have something to save here. Do residential single family, why not? And then finish. Now it has added another template here, but right now it's not visible for me. I would have to refresh the page and then it would load up. But if we go back over here and we refresh our seller report page, we open up our data template dropdown, and you can see there's now an additional option here. Now I didn't set a title on this one, so that's why it's blank, but it took all the options that I took. So we'll switch that back. There's back to my first template, and you can see all those other options are gone because the template's defining them, and then back to none. And that gives me those options again. So that just gives you an idea how the templates are set up and how those can work. Now the next thing, if I'm not using a data template, I can set all these things specific to this particular seller report. So to do that, we'll say send on Monday. Why not? Now it happens to be Monday that I'm recording this, but whatever day you're recording this is the day that this sets, because it wants to wait a week before it sends data out just to make sure that it has data to send. So it'll automatically set it to go out the following week. So we can leave it on Monday. If I wanted to hold off on the seller report for any reason, I could actually use this option to do so. So by default, it'll go out the following week. But I can change this if I'd like it to go out on some future date. Maybe I want to give it a month before I start sending the reports. I have the ability to do that here. And then next, of course, I can set the frequency. So weekly by default, but bi-weekly or monthly would work as well. Now down here, you can look through each of these options. So you can set minimum and maximum price, minimum and maximum square feet, bedrooms, minimum bathrooms, minimum bedrooms. And the whole idea here is these are all settings I can use to override what the system uses as defaults for figuring out what comps are. That way I can better fine-tune this report so that when it does go to the listing agent, they don't get a bunch of listings included on here that don't have anything to do with their listing. This just helps better narrow down to the listings that you really consider to be, based on criteria, comparable to the subject listing. And when you have this all set up the way you'd like, you just click on Finish. And now your seller report's all set. And we have our Tech Tuesday test seller report set up and ready to go out, seller with a copy to the agent, and you can see that the status is currently on. If I want to make any changes here, I can click on Actions, and I can either send it out right now, just fire one off immediately. I can send a preview. I can view history, so that's actually send history on these. I can modify it, which allows me to deactivate it or just change it altogether. It just takes me back to this page that we've already been on. There we go. And then I can also delete it if I just want to remove it altogether. Now, if I don't have any reports set up and I still want to preview the seller report, I do have the option there also. Or if I don't want to, kick off one of these individual ones, I can click Send Preview Email, and that will actually send me a preview of the seller report as well. So there you go. That is how you set up a seller report for a listing through the conventional means. Now, if I go back to the Manage My Listings page, we have some additional options here related to creating seller reports that didn't always exist before. So the next thing we have is a more convenient Create Seller Reports button up here. Now you can see that we have the seller reports functionality kind of tucked away under this menu, but let's say we want to create one for this listing. So I'll click Create Seller Report. It'll ask me what listing. You can see I just start to type in the address, or the MLS ID would work as well. But I start to type in, it comes up in the autocompleter. We'll select it, hit continue. And this takes me to that seller report creation page. If there were any reports set up already, they would be listed out here. This is basically that landing page. But because there aren't any, it takes me straight to the creation example. So I can then click Create a Seller Report, follow through that whole process, and make a seller report for just this listing. Now the next piece we have here, we'll go back to the Manage My Listings page. Now the next thing I can do is I can view deleted seller reports. So if I've had them set up in the past and I want to take a look at ones that I've had set up in here and later removed, just in case maybe I removed something by accident, I can click there and it actually opens up a new window. There we go. That shows all the seller reports that were created at one point that have since been deleted. So that way I can get just quick records of that. Now lastly, and probably the most convenient piece here, is we have a notification setting button. If I click there, this actually allows us to have the system automatically create seller reports. So when I click on that, it opens this up, and under Automatic Seller Reports, I can toggle this on, and you can see Enable Automatic Seller Reports to allow the system to automatically create a seller report that will send to you alone for every new listing picked up by the system. So what this means is, by turning this on, and by setting all of these defaults, so I'm setting Monday will be the day that I have it send. I will have it send out weekly, and here is our default report criteria, the location type, so basically how it determines what comps are based on this city, state, and zip. And this is actually report criteria that is separate from the automatic seller reports. And then listings that were last updated. So basically what this setting is allowing me to do is determine how old of listing data I want to show up on this report. So if I want to limit this to only listings that have been updated in the last 60 days, by doing that, the idea is that I get more current market data or a more up-to-date picture of the market based on the listings that I see here. So now that this is all set up, by turning this on, if I were to save this, now every time I get a new listing, every time it comes into the system will automatically create a seller report that goes to just me. And if nothing else, that sends me a weekly report so that I can see statistics on my own listings, so those traffic stats. Plus, it's kind of a reminder, like it acts as a reminder for me to go in here and ultimately set up a report that goes to the seller as well. So that way I can start getting those statistics right away, but we don't know who the seller is going to be until you go in here and set that up. So in that case, we can't create it to go to the seller. We just don't know who it's going to be. But by sending you one, you realize that, oh, there's seller reports going out on this listing. Let me make sure I set these up so they go out to the seller as well, if you want them to. So there you have it. That is the seller reports system with some of the new additions we've added here to the DeltaNet. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our support department by emailing support@deltagroup.com or giving them a call, and we can walk you through whatever else you need. So thanks a lot for joining me, and we'll talk again next week.